Welcome to the search and seizure section of this DVD. There are 3 things that are vital that you must learn about search and seizure law: reasonable suspicion, probable cause, consent to search. Let's concentrate on reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Reasonable suspicions are items or things that the officer observes that when all put together in a package, one can reasonably be suspicious that you're up to some type of crime. Your hand being nervous when you hand them the driver's license, that's a very common reasonable suspicion, but it's not quite enough to indicate that this person is involved in a crime. Now, if we put your hand shaking and then stories are not matching between the driver and the passenger, again, that's 2 reasonable suspicions. And all of these reasonable suspicions put together is going to cause him to interview you longer. It's going to cause him to ask you for consent to search. It's going to keep him at the scene longer until he can gain consent or probable cause to search your vehicle. A police officer can have 50 reasonable suspicions, and he cannot search your car without your permission or a canine alert or some other probable cause. He can have 1 probable cause, and he can search your car without your permission, and you have to let him, or he can arrest you for resisting a search or a seizure. He has to detect a crime is being committed in his presence through one of his senses. If he sees a marijuana seed, or if he smells marijuana, or if a canine indicates the odor of marijuana, he has probable cause to search your vehicle, and there's nothing you can do about it. The goal of this section is to help you eliminate as many of these reasonable suspicions as we can, where there might be only 1 or 2 instead of 10 or 15. Did you notice all of the items scattered throughout the car? Each one of those items was either reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Let's go back to those items and I'll explain to you which is which. Did you notice the marijuana leaf on the key ring? Okay, it's not illegal to have this, but that's a reasonable suspicion. I can reasonably suspect that you're a pot smoker when you have this type of paraphernalia. Did you notice the rubber bands on the gear shifter? To an untrained eye, those are just rubber bands. To an interdiction officer, these rubber bands mean to me you might be smuggling money, because narcotics money is often wrapped in rubber bands. You would not believe the millions of dollars of marijuana I seized after noticing a roach in the ashtray. That's probable cause to search, and you're in trouble, so keep this out of your ashtray. The second probable cause was this marijuana pipe. Now, this is considered a tobacco pipe if it hasn't been used, but if he can see charred ash and smell that marijuana's been smoked in that, now that's drug paraphernalia, and now it's probable cause. And then don't forget, if they find a marijuana seed laying in the floorboard, that's like seeing a pound of marijuana in the floorboard. It's just as good for them and gives them probable cause. I would check in the creases of the seats, because I knew people rolling marijuana cigarettes often dropped the seeds right down between their legs, and they wound up in the crease. Rolling papers are a reasonable suspicion. Remember, one of the first places a police officer is going to look is the glove box. So keep all reasonable suspicions out of this area, including rolling papers. It's no secret I'm a fan of High Times, but guess what? Reasonable suspicion. So if you're going to travel with the High Times magazine or any other cannabis magazines, keep them hidden and out of sight as well. Scales are not illegal to have, but with all this other stuff in here, that would make the interdiction officer think that you are a marijuana dealer. So stay away from this kind of stuff. I love pointing out these reasonable suspicions because that's what separated me from being just a normal interdiction officer to one of the top interdiction officers. I noticed everything. Look at the clear plastic baggies. You know, this is indicative of narcotics dealing. Again, they're not illegal to have, but they are definitely a reasonable suspicion that will keep the interdiction officer at your car longer. Okay, let's talk about the beer. If you're not old enough to possess this, and there's somebody in the vehicle not old enough to possess it, that gives the officer probable cause to search for more alcoholic beverages. And upon searching for those alcoholic beverages, if he finds your stash of marijuana, that's a legal search. You're in trouble. So if you're underage, don't have this in your car. Did you notice the 2 shaving cream cans? That doesn't make sense. Men have 1 shaving cream can, most men. And of course, we all know these have hidden compartments in them. So if you're going to carry one of these, carry 1 of these. I've already taught you what reasonable suspicions and probable causes were. Let's talk about consent to search. You've heard your entire life, refuse consent, refuse consent, refuse consent. I don't recommend that. You're free to do whatever you want, but I recommend quite the opposite. If you've hidden your stash in a hard-to-find location, like taught earlier in this DVD, give the officer permission to search if he asks. Here's why. 100 times out of 100, when somebody refused consent to search to me, they always had something in their vehicle they did not want me to find. It was usually drugs. Sometimes it might be a Playboy magazine or something of that nature. But there was always something they did not want me to see. Law enforcement officers know this. Even though you have the constitutional right to refuse consent, when you refuse, it raises a huge red flag. You could almost call it a huge reasonable suspicion. Upon refusing consent, that officer automatically knows now you have something to hide. If you simply say, go ahead and search my car, he's probably going to make a quick cursory search, and then you'll be on your way. If you refuse consent, he can do a weapons pat-down search of your vehicle without your permission, and upon patting the interior of the vehicle down for weapons, if he finds a marijuana seed or a marijuana pipe or something of that nature, or if he smells marijuana, then he's going to search your car without your permission. If you refuse consent to search, he's liable to get a narcotic detector dog to walk around the outside of your vehicle. If that dog fails to alert, as you learned in the K9 section, he could quite possibly cause that dog to false alert. Then you have no choice. He will also invite numerous other police officers at the scene. The call goes out on the radio. I've heard it 100 times. I have a refusal. I have a refusal. And police come from everywhere to figure out how to get in that car, and then they begin a real detailed search. So remember, if your stash is hidden well, like taught to you in this DVD, my recommendation is to give permission to search.